Well, and I don't agree with either of you. I don't agree with either of you. That's exactly where, I want to go with this podcast experience is that there's different ways to paint that scenario of what you both have done this week that are incredibly rich parts of a well-lived life.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Schulweis.
And I'm Tenjiamo.
And welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts, sometimes we talk to each other, but we're always talking to you.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care. And today we are talking about the 3 pillars of living a healthy life.
Let's get started. Our guest today is a writer, an educator, a food enthusiast, and an award-winning journalist. She has her doctorate in public health and nutrition, as well as being a registered dietitian and a certified exercise physiologist with the American College of Sports Medicine. She's been an expert contributor on NBC's Today Show and GMA, but for the past 14 years, she's been a frequent guest, one of my favorites, and nutrition expert on Live with Kelly and Mark.
She's written several books, including The Superfoods RX Diet, and co-authored Eat Clean, Stay Lean. In 2022, she was honored as Nutrition Entrepreneur of the Year, and in 2023 was awarded the prestigious Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Distinguished Lecture Award. This year, however, 2024, she started her very own podcast called 1000 Waking Minutes. I love this name, and we want to hear all about it. Please welcome back Dr. Wendy Bazilian.
Wendy, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be invited back. So that's the first thing I want to say thank you among peers, professional friends. And you guys are doing such amazing things on your podcast. I listen religiously. Lori knows because I have her text. I'll have yours soon, probably, Jen, that I'll just send her in the middle of the workout. Wow, I just feel like I had a conversation with you guys, and I was just listening as I'm,
good.
Enjoying my day. So wee hours in the morning, sometimes midday. It's awesome.
Well, any notes you have?
I know,
we welcome,
any advice, and we're happy to also share the wealth when we hear about yours.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't you catch us up on what you've been doing, and also, just tell us before we get started. And really, the top is, why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast too? Since it's right
thank
at the
you.
Forefront.
Well, we have such. We're so simpatico in our missions, I think. When I think of Everybody Talks, I think that there's such a natural synergy, between what I have been sort of teaching for a really long time, for a couple decades even, and it's been in the back of my head. It's come out through, classes and courses and retreats and all these different ways, this concept. But I am at heart, we can go into that later, but I have a liberal arts background, so I'm always thinking about the connections and the philosophy and communications of ideas. And then I'm a scientist who's pretty darn good at math. So I'm always thinking of the numbers and the orchestration and what does that mean? What exactly is happening with the body? And it hit me probably 20 plus years ago. I just started thinking about time. I was working with individuals who were trying to make strides on their health, and they say, how soon will I lose these pounds, or how quickly can I see benefit? Or they would recap and recount their life passing, different moments. And I was just thinking about time. And, the reality is if you do math on a day, it's 1,440 minutes. That's nothing new, although maybe, I don't know how many people have actually done that math, but it's 1,440 minutes. As I was teaching about, healthy behaviors, like how, 3 meals a day, and does timing matter? When should I snack? Should I have dinner after 7, or is that a myth? All the things. And then increasingly teaching about sleep and rest and recreation and all the things that go with health restoration, and realizing that the science was really building about 7 to 8 hours a night of healthy sleep. I subtracted out that 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and then we were left with 1,000 waking minutes. And it just was okay, well, there's what we have to operate with every day for our obligations, for our work, for our joy, for our health. And when people talk about not being able to fit things in, I've never been the person to, say, well, then find the time. I just start with, well, we have this life currency. Let's see how we spend it now, and let's see where we can identify places to spend it that are important to you. And so that was where it was born. I had no idea about podcasting. I still am like, do it with trepidation, but that's the beginning. So I'll stop right there.
No, it's fantastic.
That's great. And by the way, we have no idea about podcasting either.
It's a really you're always on a learning curve. We realize when you do a podcast, it's like there's always
your pants.
And there's always something new to learn that you don't even realize. You're like, oh, that. And it doesn't stop, which I think is one of the things that makes it fun.
I think, it is so much fun. And we're so excited for yours. And just bringing that message, I think the more health and wellness related, information that could get out there in a reliable way, I mean, someone like you with your background, other experts that we've had on, I think it's so important because we have this, age of the TikTok trends and social media driven, concepts of nutrition and stuff like that. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you.
I know. Me
Thank
too.
you.
We're
Thank
thrilled
you.
for you. We really are.
I appreciate it.
So we kind of wanted to get into, there were so many things that we could talk about. And one of them that we kind of thought, I think we settled on. Did we agree?
We're doing it.
I'm
just along. I wasn't part of the agreement process, but sure.
But no, we wanted to. You had mentioned these 3 pillars of health, and can you just kind of explain that concept to us, what they are and why they're essential to our overall well-being?
Yeah, thanks. Well, this is another sort of tried and true piece of my personal, professional mantra, let's say. And when I got into the health space in the health field, it wasn't my first career. I went back to school for it, and I started working with individuals, and I'd already had a number of jobs and communicating and writing, and it sort of struck me at some point that I never, ever suggested that health is an easy pursuit. We being my husband who's in traditional Chinese medicine, and I've always sort of called it like a part-time job. We've been sort of realistic about it. It is. You want it to be wildly fun, and you want to find the exercise you love, and you want to do all the, make your healthy food delicious. You want to do all those things, but it does take work. What I found challenging was that individuals that I'd start working with thought it meant so much work. They thought it meant like it was going to be a gargantuan effort, and that therefore they were paralyzed to ever get started. And so over time, we started teaching, and I was teaching some classes, and words, again, liberal arts, love of words and their meanings and their multiple meanings. I was working toward nutrition. I was working toward exercise physiology. I was looking at different spa practices that were based in cultural history and all these pieces. And 6 words sort of emerged that became the name of classes. We would offer whole week-long retreats. I would teach on the topic, and those words, the 3 pillars in 6 words, is eat well, move daily, be healthy. And those 6 words were deliberately generous and flexible and a mouthful. So people will still tell me, like, I can't remember the 6 words, so I have them meditate on it and say it'll come over time. But it's an invitation to be successful every day. And that's what they were born of. So the 3 pillars are basically all the things that help us eat well. And I actually dedicate one of the first 2 episodes in a format that's a little different than some of the others will be and have been to come. But just to really go into the words, like why did I choose the word well and not nutritious? And, why, just the details, like why daily and not like, intensely, or, like all the things, like why. And like those were very carefully chosen words that I've literally been using. We have a registered trademark on that, like I've been using that for 20 something years. Eat well, move daily, be healthy. And this is a preview. If you go back to listen to the episode, and it's up right now, I call that one the 3 pillars to a health inspired life. And I talk about the number 3 a little bit too, like 3 legs on a stool, the 3 sides of a triangle, the basis of a band, 3 instruments very often, and why, the 3 is really what holds it all together. So that's where that piece came from. And on a health inspired life, that opens the gate and opens the door to everything that we do, that can be health promoting, including things like rest, taking days off, eating, splurging, doing the stuff that makes life joyous. That's part of health as well.
Yeah. I love the 3 because it also makes
know.
me think about in yoga philosophy and Eastern traditions, there's always 3 is a very significant number.
Yeah. That's a good
3
point.
breaths. You take 3 breaths when you start your yoga practice. You close with 3 breaths. Just so that I like kind of. I don't know if you intentionally did that combo.
No, I didn't. No, this is where I can learn from you. I mean, I've done a fair share of that, but I didn't talk about it because I didn't really connect that. So I appreciate that. Yeah,
Isn't that funny?
In nature, there's so much that that really leads us to that. Down that path.
Even like in mantras and stuff, like I mean, at least ones that I do in meditations, it's always like, repeat this 3 times. It's always like the number 3 is always there. So you unintentionally incorporated that, which I love. All right. So tell us, all right, when you say eat well, what does that mean?
Break it down. We're breaking it down.
Breaking it
Break it down. We'll break it down. Well, naturally. So, credentials, and there's a lot of evidence, and I very often, and episodes will definitely be dedicated to, what's what in nutrition. What's the truth? What's the myth? It's not all about myth busting. Usually there's morsels of truth in a lot of things. And you even said it before on TikTok, you just don't have time. Even a well-intentioned person may not have time and may get, only halfway there on an element. But eating is active, and it's a basic need. I talk about that plain and simple. Like eating, we all have to do it to survive. Incredibly, here's another 3. It's like the 3rd thing to survive after breath, breathing and drinking water, hydrating. You can survive much longer without food than water or breathing, but not that long and not that well, for sure. So eating is, that piece is like the active part that is essential. And for most of us, it's 3 or more times a day. So it really already is built in. I mean, I don't know that everyone considers it like, wow, those are, almost obliged or wonderful or opportunities for my waking minutes every day. And then the well is like one of my favorite words, and deliberately, because it varies in meaning, and it varies when someone enters the conversation on what they're thinking. So well, I say this also, so it's fun to reinforce on some of the things that I've said a million times, and a bazillion times, I should say. A bazillion, I should use my last name on that one.
Always use bazillion times.
Always use bazillion. A bazillion times, but I think it's worth, and maybe there's another one here, so please tell me if there is. Well is like well and wellness, so no question, you hear well, you're thinking health. Yes. Or a lot of people, first time with me, they're assuming, health. But well is also good, right? So well is like something good, and that can be subjective. It's not just objective. It can be like, yeah, this is an amazing eat well moment. Well is also about depth. You think of a well outside, on the land, and well is the depth of, so that might suggest not only flexibility, but certainly variety in what you eat. It's, it's not all about like, I'll get, I could dedicate a whole episode on or talk to you about one food for an hour or more. But at the end of the day, we have to put it on the plate and put it hopefully with other people, and put it in a context of time. And so the well part is just really about celebrating all the meanings of well and making sure that you can be successful. Like my goal is to give an A out the gate in the morning, like you've got an A. If you want the A+, that's fine too. And it's about sort of maintaining that and a whole day well lived. At the end of the day, you go eat well. not being like, oh, I really botched this one, and we're so quick to criticize and so quick to critique our own self that why don't, it's about, celebrating the things we do well. So that's the eat well, which opens up, the doors to so many things.
Yeah, I like that.
I know.
It's broad enough. Like all three of them really are broad enough where you can, like you said, that they're flexible and
There's
you
a
can
lot of wiggle room.
Yeah,
in there.
you can
Like
bring your own meaning.
Because I agree with what you said before. Like we are so self-critical that if so many people like you eat, especially when it comes to eating, when you think of like eating like healthy in quotes, and you have one bad meal and you're like, oh well, if it's at lunch, then okay, I'm just going to keep eating bad for the day and not really like taking that into consideration that's just like, okay, the
one
day's
meal.
not over. It's
Yeah.
just one meal. It's like give
Yeah.
yourself a break and then do better the next time or feel
Yeah.
better the next time.
Right.
And and they're connected. You're exactly right. Because the thing
Yeah.
is, like, keeping our eyes wide open is a good thing. So we can be aware that maybe we were seeking something that we couldn't have, or we just chose to have it. So maybe that, sort of begs the question on like, so what am I going to choose at the next meal? I could do this or that. But given what I did, a few hours ago, not admonishing at all, saying in the context, I think I'm going to choose this because that makes for a day well lived. And I just think I've been told, it's not I think, I've been told when working with people that it's a way to elevate the smarts that you already have built in. I mean, people know what they're doing. I mean, the first thing I always say if I have a look of people with their arms, crossed over and they're sort of like, what's this nutrition person going to tell me? It's like they're half closed before they can be open. I said, we're all food experts. Maybe I just have a way to unearth something that you already know, fine. Then I've done my job. Maybe I have a little science to support or establish why what you're doing is awesome. And maybe just maybe I have a tip or two that, you haven't heard before and that connects or clicks today, or tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think it's also like a checking in point too, like this eat well, the idea of it's like, Lori said, like you have this quote unquote bad meal. It's like, how did that make you feel? Did that make you feel well? Did that make you feel,
Right.
How did you feel after you ate that? I didn't feel well. So what do I do better the next time? So another way to kind of check in with that pillar.
And to your point about how you feel afterwards, we don't all have the same experience of unwell and well either. So, to put a firm label on, well, what we're really talking about is feeling full. Well, maybe that's not how you feel well or unwell. Maybe it's bloating, or maybe it's foggy, or maybe it's, or maybe it's like energized and ebullient, like there's so many versions of it. So it does allow you to really personalize it. And then we can really have a deeper conversation about now what are your goals for that? Because, I don't just blanket coat, like, okay, here's my program you're going to go on if you work with me. I want to help you, help the person that's coming to me for some tips or advice.
It's so funny you saying that about like follow my program, because I mean, over the years, I think everybody knows this, I've been, on a extended weight loss journey. It's very extended. But I remember the first nutritionist I went to, who I won't name, but I went to his office once a week. He gave me a plan. He told me exactly what to eat. He told me what not to eat. And I followed it. And I followed it. I definitely lost weight, but I didn't carry it through to the next because I feel like he was really doing what you just said. I think it's changed so much how people view like it's like they want health. They don't necessarily, you want to be healthy, not skinny. You want to be fit and strong. And so, back in the day, I mean, this is, easily 35 years ago or 40 years ago, maybe. I'm mighty old, Wendy. I'm mighty old.
Well, you don't look it, so I'm impressed. You must have been like 3, and you shouldn't have been dieting when you were 3.
I know. But it was just interesting to me. I think I recently, I actually was cleaning and came across some, because you had to write down everything that you ate.
And God knows you still have that list.
I still do. I came across them, and it is just funny. I mean, a lot of those things, I still don't do, and I still don't choose certain foods because it was like, you carry through from that very
It's kind
first
of ingrained.
time.
Yeah, you think about that.
But
yeah.
it is interesting how you want to help people now in such a different way than people did, 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to recheck yourself as we, evolve and grow internally, because we do fix ourselves into certain things that then we, either wake up or you have the opportunity one day, you're like, wait a sec, I still sort of do something. I wonder why, like, do I need to be, like you recheck it. I don't know if there have been things in your life like that. There certainly have been for me where, it's like sort of you walk down the path and forevermore, it seems to be the thing until one day someone like sets you straight. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that I was not or
Right.
opening myself up to that in a different way.
It's true. Like
Yeah.
just a little, I mean, like I never ate pasta. I stopped eating pasta for years, and I still will never choose like a pasta dish because of that nutritionist way back 35 years
Yeah.
ago. Even though it
Yeah.
might be delicious and it might be the right thing to do or whatever. It's just funny.
It might
is
make
funny.
you feel well.
It might make me feel,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, that leads me to my question about like bioindividuality in nutrition and how can people find what works best for their unique bodies when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And as you well know, because you've covered some of this in your show already, that there's a lot of research coming down the pipeline looking at the different ways to sort of evaluate whether it's sensitivities or try things out or nutrigenomics. Are there genes that are suggestive of us being sensitive to one thing or another, or that kind of does our genetic heritage orient us toward a certain way of life and living. And it's fascinating. It can also, again, become a big tangle of hangers in our brain. I call it, like where we're like, what do we do with that information? I just want to sit down and have a good meal already. But I think the individuality part is, I think it's wonderful that we have so many eating styles and programs. I really don't get offended by them unless they're really hurting people and I see damage. I don't get up on a soapbox about it, but I'm like, wow, this one's really, pushing the envelope and look what's happening. And I think trying on things is an interesting approach, really. It shows us certainly how resilient we are. I've tried on, that's what I call it, trying it on, like the
Yeah.
various diets over time. I've tried them on deliberately just to see what it's like. Also give it a fair shake. If someone's telling me, gosh, I feel great on this, I'm like, well, who am I to judge? I don't know everything. I can point you to some research, and if you're not doing harm, maybe I can enhance and make it, that diet, yours. Like we can make it, that version yours by tweaking it. So I love the idea of the individuality. I never, sort of just with sight unseen hear someone who comes to me and says, I'm following the XYZ diet, and go like, well, it really can't work with you, or that really, you shouldn't, and here's why. Never. I'm like, tell me more. Tell me more
Right.
about that. And then,
Such a good
and
way
then
to
we can
be.
enter it. And I think
Yeah.
the first place for individuality is really being willing to reflect on what you do and what you like to do. And people, roll their eyes when I say this, but that food diary that you found, and that you can
Yeah.
find, that can tell a lot of cool things about us. It's such a pain in the butt to do those sometimes, but they can help us when we're on health journeys to identify patterns, things that do make us feel good. Maybe there was a habit that you adopted back then that you just has been rock solid for you ever since. And you're like, well, that was a great takeaway from that plan. And I would never question that again.
And I just think it always makes people more aware. I mean, I used to think, I still do think this, that people underestimate what they eat in a day, or they forget, or there's a lot of mindless eating that happens that, I'm cooking dinner and I'm eating, a handful of nuts. Well, write that down. That counts, So I think it just makes you so much more aware of what you are putting in your mouth at any given moment, if you have to write it down, and then I think it does become kind of instinctual, like kind of a habit, right? Like you don't
write it down?
No, like just to know, like, okay, I know what I ate today. You know what I mean? After you do it for a certain amount of time.
I always say, like, let's see it, let's rule it in or roll it out. You know what I mean? Like some of those experimentations, or when I work with people with food sensitivities, and you'll get that information then, and then you'll have to make some choices. It's like willing, not willing. Try it on for a little bit again. clearly try it on is my theme of, the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
But you work, you work
You have
on,
8 words now.
like the idea of eliminating something from the
Yeah.
diet sounds terrible, especially if it's something you love. Would you be willing, if it could be, would you be willing to try that for a couple weeks just to see? And then you have a decision to make then. It's just, like, what can we do with our time, and how do we spend and share our moments? The association of the food journal, the daunting task of the food journal with to 1,000 waking minutes. And I have this for one of the episodes that's coming up. Maybe it's, well, at any rate, it's the 4th episode, number 4. They get posted, and I'm still learning. But it's about the origin of the title, so a little bit, in some what I shared with you. But I have a handout I developed on, that looked a little more clunky, and now it looks more sophisticated. And it's a free download, and it's sort of a time audit, which sounds horrible. I call it the time check, actually. And it allows you to look over the course of the day where you spend your life's currency, where you spend those 1,000 waking minutes every day. Because if you think about it, we don't get those back. You get the filled for the day, upon waking, and then at the end of the day, they're not there anymore. But it gives you the opportunity in a real simple way to see, okay, X number of hours are dedicated, and you translate those to minutes, to work. That's life, to errands. It's not like, I like the concept when people say, act like this is your last day on earth, what would you do? But, I expect to have a tomorrow and many tomorrows. And so I like the idea of living in the present with the expectation of tomorrow. So let's check out what we're doing now and what would we like to be doing in our tomorrows to come. But you can never know if you don't write it down, you don't check yourself out and get a baseline.
I think
kind of love that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, to your point of like being present, I think that is such a great way to keep you in the present moment.
Yeah.
And really keep you focused on the now. It's like we are constantly thinking about what's coming up, or what we did in the past that was wrong, or this, this mistake, or what, even if it's a positive thing, I'm looking forward to X, but it's like, are you living in the now, in this present moment? What did you do with your 1,000 minutes today?
It's so true, because you're always thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. You're never thinking about today or right now.
Yeah.
It's like what's coming up even in like the next few moments.
Except right now, we're here present
We're
with Wendy.
very present with Wendy. We're very present.
Well, I'd like to ask, Jen, with your clients, if you run into this, I certainly have, and Laura, your experience, and I've been in this both in my professional role, but also personally, on instances where you feel like a day off from exercise, for example, is like a bad thing, or that you're constantly like working on, like, I'm supposed to work out today, and then you don't work out, and you don't like legitimately call it a day off, which I really advocate, is figuring out when the days off are. It'll help you to get to the days on better. But, like, mindlessly scrolling on your Instagram feed and feeling bad about it is one thing. Building in time where your day was so filled with wonderful things that, or like work things and necessary things, not every day is like, a vacation day, but all the necessary things, but you accomplish the things that you wanted, and then you mindlessly scroll on the Instagram. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe you don't have to judge it. Maybe it's just part of those waking minutes that you spent being on social media, and maybe it was fun, like then you're not admonishing yourself for something you think you shouldn't have done, So, I'm curious, if you felt that, because I certainly felt like I've gone through phases where I'm like, oh man, I didn't get to exercise today. And it makes like days off feel crappy. It makes days on feel terrible, messed up.
For sure.
Yeah.
I definitely have that experience with clients and with myself, all the the shoulds. There's a lot of shoulds. I should have done this. I didn't do that. I could have done that, but I didn't. I didn't work out today. So now tomorrow I'm going to work out for 3 hours. Like, all of those sort of, it's just self-punishment types of behaviors,
Definitely.
It
is. Even I think I spoke about this before, but like during the summer, I went and I visited a friend. And, most weekends I work anyway. I'm working on regular work. I'm working on the podcast. Then I have to do errands. I'm walking the dog. Like the weekends aren't, I don't know when the weekends stop being weekends, like where you actually do something that's just for you or just relax. And I took a weekend where I went to the beach and I read a book, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And it's like, wow, I really needed that kind of decompression time, not thinking about, oh my God, I have to do this. I have to do this. I should be doing this now. I got to be doing this now. There's not,
I think that's
you
so
underestimate
good.
the need
So
for
good.
those times of day off,
And
truly.
to be able to do that, and this is where I struggle, to be able to have a day like that or a weekend
Yeah,
and not
you-
feel guilty about it.
Right,
You,
Or
you
be,
right.
have that worse
Absolutely.
than I do. I mean, I definitely feel bad about it, but I mean, I've had a very, at the time of we're recording this, we just said goodbye to Art Moore on our show. And it was a very emotional week for me, like really saying goodbye. It was very, a friend of mine said to me, it was very Regis-like to me because I was close to him. And when he left, I didn't think that I could recover. And now Art, another real pillar, talk about pillars, in my community also is leaving my very daily life, like seeing him every day. And it was so exhausting and emotional, and party after party and saying goodbye and all this stuff that last night I finally came home and I couldn't do a thing. I laid on the couch literally and watched TV. I don't even remember what I watched. Like, it was just like, I just needed that kind of like shut down. I need to not do a thing right now because I just need to like decompress from this kind of emotional
and
week
be okay
that
with
I've
it.
had.
And be okay with it. It's
Yeah,
I think the
and
most
just be
important
That's a
like,
part.
lot, right?
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot. I have a lot of trouble doing that.
Yeah.
I'm very, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other thing. I need a therapist for that. I don't need a nutritionist. I need a therapist.
No, you're not alone. I mean, many people do. And I think that that's where people have, and hopefully will on 1000 Waking Minutes sort of connect to the idea, one, that we're not alone. I mean, if I can do anything and connect with people so that we feel like, oh, I've been there, or, oh, I didn't know people deal with that, but I deal with other things, but wow, I can be more compassionate because these are real issues that you may or may not experience or be aware of. I think that we get, we're hypercritical of ourselves as we've been talking about. And also, people get afraid to plan for the fear that they might want to change the plan. That's one of the most famous things that people say to me. They're like, well, I don't want to do that meal planning. I mean, aside from like, it's going to take a lot of my time. They're like, what if I don't want what's for dinner, like on the menu? I'm like, well, then the great news is you probably will, because, how much do we love when something just shows up in front of, like the plan just happens. We don't have to think about it.
Totally.
You probably will.
Yeah.
And guess what? We can change the plan. Like that's the really cool thing about planning is that, unless you're, the ticket's been bought to something when we're doing meals and whatnot. And guess what? You'll probably have those ingredients or, those things in the fridge. Or guess what? You might make a different decision because you've planned to have dinner out that night and not tonight. And it might help you get over some of those thousands of hurdles every day of micro decision making that we have to do and feel pretty good about, like, wow, this was a legitimate day off, yay me, as opposed to like, I feel like I should be feeling guilty about this right now.
Yesterday, just to give you an example, we can probably cut this out, but I just want to tell you this story. Yesterday, so I just moved back into my apartment here in New York, and I had all these things that needed to get done. And like for the past month, they weren't getting done. And like, I just hadn't been here enough and things. Anyway, so yesterday I end up having all these like handymen and things and stuff like scheduled to do. And I was like a prisoner in my apartment because everyone was there working on something. And I was like, oh my God. Like, what? I mean, yay, I was excited that everything was getting done. But I personally felt like, holy shit, I'm not doing anything. What am I doing? Like, I'm not doing anything, I was like at my computer in the kitchen on the stove because I couldn't move around anywhere else, But anyway, I don't know. That's neither here nor there.
Just to add to that, you did a lot. Like, I know that you did a lot.
For the podcast, I did a lot. Yeah. But like,
well, yeah, and I would.
Because I've been useless
I
this week.
well, I would be suggesting. Well, and I don't agree with either of you. I don't agree with either of you. That's exactly where I want to go with this podcast experience. Is that there's different ways to paint that scenario of what you both have done this week that are incredibly rich parts of a well-lived life. I mean, and they're completely appropriate. And your ability, Jen, for tomorrow to be, ambitious and all the things that you love to build in is in part because you did yesterday a certain way, but not because you suffered through it, but because you allowed yourself to be when you were talking to me about that, I felt like you were the producer, the production, I felt like you're on a set of a studio, like the director of what's going on, and Lori, when you were talking about, art, which I think, I'm emotional about it. And I certainly didn't know him to the extent, but when, someone who is like a pillar, an anchor, an expectation, and that you put all that energy also into the send off, not to mention that, it was personal for you. What an amazing gift to yourself, these last few days, and even laying there on the sofa and not remembering what it was like your body saying, I got to process so that I can wake up tomorrow and, have a smile on my face and not catch a cold and, do the things that I love in life. I think these are both success stories on days well lived. And, even if they're not the version of the perfectly painted spa day where we're giving ourselves all those health gifts, which are great too.
Yeah. It wouldn't have killed you to do a little work yesterday while you were laying on the couch. You could have had your laptop on your lap, since you didn't even know what you watched. I don't know. I'm joking. I'm totally joking. But yeah, no,
really
look, it's like I am such I don't practice what I preach sometimes. Cause like you said earlier about this rest and recovery and sleep being so, so, so important. Which also changes as we age and, different things that are happening hormonally, but prioritizing that rest and even just the break from the workouts is like, then you can get back to it so much stronger, so much, more excited, I think, to do it, but
it's relatable too. It's good, no, I have met very few people who, are perfect pillars of, what they advocate. And of course that breeds a certain type of arrogance as well, like that we're not human beings, that someone lives that way. Maybe certain people live in a discipline like that. But I tend to believe that there's other things that are perhaps not as balanced, or we're not getting the full story when that doesn't happen. We're not robots, we're not. And I think that it makes you relatable and probably better even as being able to talk to other people and also coach people on their journeys by literally understanding where they're coming from. Empathy is such an important part of being a good careger or coach or instructor.
We haven't gotten to pillar number 2.
We have veered wildly off course.
Veered away. Tell us.
You get the spirit of all of them by us diving deep into
I know, because
the
next one was Move Daily. We did talk a little bit about how you feel about exercising every day and the guilt that goes along with that. But I guess talk about, what's behind that a little bit.
Well, one of the points I made when I talked about the three pillars a little more deeply on the second episode was really that the body is built to move. Like it's built to move. Like we have to move. So your success with living, requires us to move daily. What I love about daily is or why it was important to me, and I guess I hope that others who work with me have loved it, is that you can be successful even on a day off, as a day off the way we define it in terms of fitness or goals. And moving is not inherently that we all have to go the same, like the goals, even if there's established rules and science to support 30 minutes a day on most days of the week, like the things that we know, I will spend plenty of time talking about those things that we know. Or if you are training for an event or you're trying to improve this, there's specific things which is super awesome to know about on how to help get you there. But the ADLs, activities of daily living and functional fitness and physical therapy and those modalities, both built into your day, occupational therapy, those things built into our day, our movement, and that they're, the daily is like not about the prescriptive part, except in as much to say, you got to do something, and then most of us want to be somewhere with our health journey and might then need to then define, like, where do I want to go? And then we can start layering in. Again, it's about individuality. The Move Daily for me as a pillar within the 1000 waking minutes also allows time for things like, the structured exercise, if that fits in, but also the, walk around the block if you're picking up the kids, and you have extra few minutes. Oh, it reminds me, I'm going to come back to a little story here in a second. It also allows for stretching. It allows for coordination. It allows for, things that you can do when you're doing other things that can be moving. It's wide open on. It can be recess activities. It can be a spontaneous dancing. It can be, anything and everything. And when you start seeing all the places you can move, all of a sudden you start moving more. That's just what my experience has been with that tenet, is people like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a lot more. There's been even research. So there's research. This is not the story. There was research years back about, I would have to find the research to tell you, but it was about housekeepers and the hotel service staff in their daily work, cleaning rooms. And they gave a similar instruction to both groups. They split them into two groups. And one of them, they told them that their work counted as exercise, and the others, they just didn't tell them. And the group that they told that their work was exercise, they lost more weight, statistically significantly more weight. I had no intention of telling you this today, but I was like so blown away.
That is crazy.
How cool it is when you qualify, you quantify, you allow for the idea that some of those waking minutes that you're actually doing things actively literally have a health benefit. Which, how? Well, it probably made them feel, inspired for other health activities. They probably counted more. Maybe they did more. All the confounders weren't taken away, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That's almost like getting credit for something that you're already doing just by telling you that it counts. So that's the basis. And I'll stop there, but well, do you want to hear this little story?
Sure, yes.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm going to have to talk about, I'll bring this up in some episode, but it won't be for a while. So this is first for you.
Oh, we're getting the first hand.
Wow, scoop.
I used to gift this book, and I haven't in a while, so I'm going to have to unearth this from my brain for a second. But there's a book by Joan Anderson, and it's called A Walk on the Beach. And it's this beautiful, real easy read. Have either of you heard of it? The first
No.
of all?
No.
It's a real easy, thin 100-something pages. And it was written by, it's by Joan Anderson, and it's about a year, I think, in Cape Cod. Really, goes back a number of years, but a year that Joan Anderson, the writer, it's like a semi-memoir, or, a type of a blip memoir in her life. A year in the life where she took like a sabbatical from her life at home as she knew it and went to this area. I think it was Cape Cod. Anyway, she met up with Joan Erickson, who was the wife of Erik Erikson, the famed psychologist, of the day. And it was about their relationship over the course of the year. So this book is just this beautiful two Joans. Joan at the time, who was the writer, was about 40, I think, if I recall correctly. Joan Erickson was 90. I think she was 90. But she was like, it was the older Joan and the younger Joan, two Joans together on the beach. There's one scene in the book. It's just very brief, a couple pages, but it talks about younger Joan going to meet and get to know older Joan. And she was a little bit nervous, and she was excited about this new female friend she was making. And so she was showing up to her home, and she rapped on the door and, didn't immediately have a response. And so she peered in the window, and what she saw was older Joan. And like, as I recall, sometimes I embellish my storytelling if I'm not fresh on it, but this is what I recall in my mind: a long black skirt, and she was walking very slowly on a treadmill. And then finally, Joan Erickson, older Joan, comes to the door and greets her and everything. And the dialogue goes something like, forgive me for peeping, but what were you doing? And she said, well, I knew you wouldn't be there for about 5 minutes, so I decided, to make a little use of my time.
Wow.
And she was dressed. She was just waiting on a visitor. She was moving daily, 5 minutes on and I just love that sort of,
That's fantastic.
I had some minutes, and that's how I wanted to spend them.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good
Fantastic.
reminder for people who think it has to look a certain way. Like, oh, I have to be in my workout clothes and I have to have this done. And it can look any way. You could be in your skirt and walking on a treadmill.
I recently found out that Jen works out like in pajamas, sometimes in bare feet, sometimes in a bathing suit. Like, it doesn't matter. Where I get like a full
She gets
outfit
all
on.
dressed.
I get
I'm
all
like,
dressed.
The look.
I wear workout clothes.
I sometimes don't even wear a sports bra.
I know. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, that's how you work out in?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I know I have this time. I happen to be in my pajamas. It's 7 a.m. I'm
But
going
I'll
to do
just do
this
it.
before
Yeah.
I get my day started. But I'm not going to go waste 10 minutes to go get changed into an outfit that A, no one's seeing, and B, I don't need to be in.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'm sort of with both of you. When I'm out and about, I love to like put on the cool, outfit or just, try to be with the genre. I am not a tennis player. I like it very much, but I've got the cutest tennis clothes, like, because when I
very
do
in
go out for a
now. It's very
lesson,
in now.
it is. The
I like,
tennis
I'll
skirts.
go
Yep.
go out there and they're like, wow, and then I'm like, well, don't look at my but I'm like you too, Jen. And, as a mom of a 5-year-old, I'm up in the middle of the night and I have all states of, everything from barely anything to pajamas to like half of my work day, like,
Yeah.
but
My
love
only, living back in the city again, as opposed to at the beach, at the beach, I can go take the dogs out in my pajamas and just go around.
Now you cannot.
And now I'm like, will I look crazy? Probably. I'll probably look crazy.
There
if
are a
I do
lot of,
that.
I see a lot of people walking their dogs in pajamas.
In
the
pajamas.
morning.
Eh,
Yeah.
maybe
You
I'll
can get away with it.
try doing that.
Oh my God, hilarious.
But so, all right. So speaking of movement and getting in
Right.
daily movement, what is your thought on the 10,000 steps a day?
yeah, well, I think it's an interesting concept, and I've looked at the research over the years, as I'm sure you have. It does give you an average measurement of steps, and it gives people sort of tangible goals that they can count. And for some reason, we like that. We like that. Like, where are you at? How are you at compared to tomorrow? Um, uh, so I like it. Some of the research has upended, how relevant that is, and is that what we really need, or do we actually need more if you're trying to get these goals? I think it can be very deflating for individuals sometimes that I work with who I say, just count how many you get. And they come back and they're like, I got 2,000. And then they feel like they're failing out the gate. So I think that it's context, like everything, context there. One time when I was writing my first book, I remember I was writing about the steps, and I had the step counter before they were like electronic. And there was one day when I didn't move from my desk except to go to the bathroom, and I got 684 steps. That was a reality check. 684 in the whole day. That's not like, you can't even move around the house and get that few steps, literally.
Wow.
So I like it. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it, but I like it because, that's not a definitive end all. And 10,000, 10,000 waves, and there's a Japanese poetry to the concept of 10,000. But measuring steps is one way to measure. There's one of my episodes on walking after meals, I talk about 700 steps. And so I do use the concept of steps and how those can be additive on your day, and actually, in a Move Daily spirit, they really do count. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a low barrier to entry, right? Anybody can walk for the most part. And it's an easy thing to do. I think the 10,000 steps concept is a good sort of motivator for people. But to your point, it could be deflating but it's also a reality check. It's like, oh, I only walked 2,000 steps. So how do I increase that? How do I, and then there's research that says, well, you really only need 7,000 for this. But I think depending on what your goals are you doing it for heart health? Are you doing it to lose weight? What is the motive? But overall, I think it's good.
One more piece on that, Jen, that I've had some charts over the years. I was just picturing one in my head where I'd have that sort of 10,000 mapped out. The one thing that's really important that I have talked, and maybe you have too, with clients is like, if you do that as math, back to the math mind and where the 1,000 waking minutes comes from, it's very hard. You can't be unfit and even expect to do 70,000 in a day. So if you're trying to accomplish 10,000 in a week, you could build in days off or whatever number you're choosing. You have to multiply it out in time, but it's not advantageous. You'd probably even be injured if you're not already doing it, trying to stack them all out and up and be a weekend warrior or try to get, it's
Yes.
impossible. 70,000 steps in a day, you'd be walking, all
Right.
day. So it does put a context in like the reason why daily goals are good goals, because you can't do it all in a day.
For people that struggle with consistency in like a typical workout or exercise routine, it's like it's good for them to just know, hey, I can walk. I can just walk. And
Yeah.
that's enough, you know?
I mean, some days walking is the only exercise I do, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on my feet literally from like 8:30 in the morning to like noon without sitting down. And so I have to not discount that as part of the exercise, that I'm
Sure.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're thinking and doing and functioning in a way that you are moving. I'm not sitting behind a desk half of my day like that a lot of people are. And I
Yeah.
kind of discount that a lot of times,
I do think I just want to point this out too. Like the flip side of this are, I think, people that are almost obsessive about it, right? And people who, like you're just saying, just thought of this when you were saying you're standing all day. Like, I remember back in the day when it was like how many calories can I burn today? Oh, well, if I stand up and eat, I'm burning more calories. If I do, the stand-up desks now, the walking treadmills under the desks. There is also the flip side where people get a little bit too, I think, obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, let's figure out what is a
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
balance, right? Do you
What's the balance?
see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a hotel that I had stayed at a couple times in New York years ago, and I thought it was so clever when I saw it. And then I saw the potential for exactly what you just said, Jen. And the hotel, I know where it was. I can't remember the name. It wasn't the main one that you would recognize, but it's cool. And their gym was open 24 hours a day, and they had like a really nice wellness focus. Within, they had the scents and the robes, and they had all the creature comforts of like celebrating wellness. And they had a breakfast menu that was called, I just thought this was great at the time, and there is a cleverness to it. It was called the 0-calorie breakfast. And the 0-calorie breakfast, they would put the breakfast of your oatmeal and your berries and the classic things. They would associate it with how much what exercise you have to do
Oh,
to
that's funny.
make it 0. Clever. And
But-
to your point, does the joy of eating get taken away slightly if eating it is, requisite, if there's a requisite relationship between that? There's a cleverness to associating movement with what we take in. I think that is important to tie together. And then there's that may be more reasonable because, like we're not doing that, or I guess it depends. I'm gonna have to work that out. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that there's it's you're yes, I do think it's clever, and I think that it gives people a reality check. I think there's probably more of the population that benefits from messages like that versus the other. But there's that percentage of people that have disordered eating or any sort of like over exercise or exercise to as a punishment for what I ate and those kinds of things. But
can I just have my donut, or can I just
Right.
eat my delicious healthy
Eat a piece of
breakfast?
chocolate cake, but then I have to go run on the treadmill, that kind of thing.
I think that's a mentality that has been perpetuated. I think more so among women than men, I would say, just in my experience. But
the 0-calorie breakfast, I have more problems with because that's like associating a one healthy behavior with it, like two healthy behaviors, but like canceling them out, which, I think is problematic. Certain things are, awareness campaigns, to your point, they appeal to maybe they may have impact. There's some mixed results on that having impact on, positive.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know that it's like the, fear versus positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Good point.
But so the last pillar is be healthy. I think that kind of like sums everything up.
Right.
But tell us, like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So in Be Healthy, one piece that I try to make clear is a state of being is a state of you. The be is about you, and it's active also. And healthy is not an end game. It's not just a static pursuit that once you get there, all things like the um, the bells will start ringing,
Exactly.
I'm imagining sounds in my head. That health is dynamic. And so the be healthy sort of pillar really does encompass a lot of those self-care elements that, are part and parcel with what you talk about on Everybody Talks, from, everything from therapeutic massage. And by therapeutic, I mean the kind that research has shown that help with XYZ, but also the joy of getting body work done or touch. It talks about behaviors in health about that you can apply to yourself, about things like meditation and mindfulness. And if meditation feels like a leap, because for some people, I've met many people that they're like, this idea of meditation feels like a whole another world that they actually don't want to go into, and that's okay. There's other ways that you can tap into self. And it's a host of it's sleep, it's recreation, it's celebrating life. It's like that those are all elements of health. So be healthy is just as important as the other two, but it sort of encompasses a wider range that support and also build and boost so that, at the end of the day, if you're eating good food and you're exercising regularly, but you're not having joyous life and grounding yourself in nature and having connectivity, I guess, with humans, other humans, then, are you really healthy,
Right.
and are you really having a well-lived
Yeah.
life? So it encompasses those.
I feel like that's where like the
Yeah.
mental health and emotional health aspects kind
Yeah,
of fall
absolutely.
under, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Yes, absolutely. Mhm.
Can we ask you personally, how do you maintain balance across these three pillars?
Yeah. Well, I apply them to myself the same way and with a soft, gentle hand, not every day because I'm pretty driven as an individual, but with a soft, gentle hand as well. And I'm far from perfect. So I think of life as having different seasons, and that there are times when, if you're a driven individual, you need to get things done. I don't have perfect hours of sleep like anyone else. And yet I keep front and center that these things are important so that you make decisions, or you go through different life phases or stages where your schedule gets overbooked. But if you bring these forward on a daily basis, then maybe you schedule that dinner with the friend that you've been putting off because you just don't have time. And, even if every minute up until you share that minute, you're like, oh, maybe I should cancel. I really got this deadline. What that dinner appointment held in place does for your life are huge. Right. So the more you practice these things, the more that you make them important, the more that you bring awareness to them, the better you get at them. And so I think that's how I do it. I cut myself slack. Not well sometimes. I think one of the things I say, I think the episode right about the three pillars is moderation is relative. I go into moderate,
I love that.
If you're rigid in moderation and you are not moderate, so you need to recognize that all of these things fit in there, but there is a balance. And I often, I talked about this too. I think of a seesaw, and I think of when we're kids. I'm not really giving you a good seesaw. Picture a straight seesaw. Jen, I need some tips. A seesaw, with the seesaw with the kids, like balance is those seconds of harmony until you're not quite in balance anymore. Like balance is, again, it's relative. And so you're constantly teeter-tottering, actually, so it's your choices that are, all right, a couple more choices this way. Oh, good. A couple more choices. Like all these things. And so I think of life that way. Of life that way. And that's what I try to apply it. And I try to, and I'm not perfect. So that will probably reveal itself within the podcast as well.
That's a great analogy. I mean,
yeah, I do. I like that because I do think of balance as like this fleeting moment. Like you never have it perfect all the time. What is perfect anyway? And like it's very individual. But we think you're pretty perfect.
We think you are.
Wendy,
and if you like this podcast with Dr. Wendy Bazilian, you're going to love her podcast, which is 1,000 Waking Minutes. Listen wherever you get your podcast, wherever you got this one, listen to hers. Dr. Wendy Bazilian, thanks so much for being here
Thank
again
you
with us.
so
We really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you both. Be well.
Be well.
Be well.
Another fantastic conversation with Dr. Wendy Bazilian. I love her.
Yeah, she's so great. And she has this ability to take like these sort of simple concepts, but she like goes deeper and gives them more meaning.
Yes, very methodically gets under the surface. Just even like, what struck me is that a lot of parents don't like that why stage.
The why
of
questions. Yeah.
And she just was like reveling in it,
Yeah.
like with her daughter, because that's the way she does things. That's the way she goes through life, is asking the whys.
The whys and being and thinking critically.
Yeah.
And yeah. No, she's always so great to talk to. I'm excited to listen to her podcast.
I know, me too.
Yeah, she was great.
So everybody, when you're done with this one, listen to hers, 1,000 Waking Minutes with Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and I'm Lori Schulweiss.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
And this was Everybody Talks.
Talk to you next time.
Take care.
For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, and to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at everybodytalkspodcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shuli, at Jen Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
Join the Everybody Talks community by checking out our Patreon page, where you can become an exclusive member of our wellness group and be a part of the conversation.
And don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweiss and Jen Giamo. Produced and edited by Station 16.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, and Murray.
Talk to you next time.